And me and my friends would just pick up some of the old rackets that they had in the bins and we would play around and just hit the ball. And I thought it was really fun.
Here we are for another Boast About It. I'm here with Open Squash member Helen Wu. Helen, welcome to Boast About It.
Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited to have you here, not least because Kira, one of my favorite people and one of our great coaches, has said we got to talk to you. So why did you start playing in high school? Where were you? How did that go? Tell us about that story.
Yeah, I've never heard about squash until I came to the US. My family's from Shanghai, China, and I went to a boarding school called Concord Academy that had squash courts. So it was like right in the middle of our fitness space and the courts were always there. So during the off season, me and my friends would just pick up some of the old rackets that they had in the bins and we would play around and just hit the ball. And I thought it was really fun. And in high school, squash actually wasn't my primary sport. I was mostly a runner, so I was way more serious about cross country and track. But then I decided to try out because I was hitting the balls like on the off season and I was like, this is fun. So I tried out for 2 years and I didn't get in because we only had 4 courts to split among the boys and girls varsity teams. We didn't have enough like even courts for a junior varsity team.
Yeah.
So the first 2 years I didn't make it, but I didn't give up. And my 3rd year, I finally made the team.
You made the team?
Yeah, so I started
amazing.
playing
Fist
my
bump.
junior year.
Boom!
I know, from like no squash
From
experience.
nothing.
Yeah, just like my
That's
friends
amazing.
teaching me.
Wow. And so, well, that must have been a big moment. You made it to the team. How
Yeah.
many people on the team?
There was like only 12 girls.
And so you were presumably, no offense, but presumably towards the bottom of
Yes.
the roster.
Yes,
Right?
yes, I was.
And I think, if I understand the way those teams work, the top 9 play. Did you play in tournaments?
Yes, I did play, but I think the top 7 scored, so I wasn't scoring for a lot of my
Right.
career. And then senior year, like there were a couple like challenge matches where I did make it to 7, so I played a little bit, but that was a lot of pressure. Yeah.
Wow. How were those matches out there where it matters for your school?
Oh my gosh. I think as a high schooler, like it's very like it's a way different type of pressure than like running, for example. Because when you're running on the course, nobody sees you and you're very focused. But squash, you're in this glass box, your friends are cheering you on and everybody's watching you. So I felt very perceived. And I feel like I didn't handle the pressure very well when I was in high school, but it was still fun to play the matches.
Yeah. You graduated high school, went to college. My understanding is then you stopped playing squash. Is that right? No squash in college?
No squash in college.
So you went through Penn, you graduated, and I think you said you went to a pretty prestigious consulting company, right? BCG, is that right?
Yes.
You went to BCG. How was that first? How was working for BCG?
It was good. So I did the internship, which was really exciting. Like they wined and dined us and took us to all these awesome places, like booked out like Rockefeller rink in the summer for just the interns, things like that. That was a really good experience. But then when I returned full time, there was a lot of work that I couldn't do because I studied something that is kind of related to public health in college, but I couldn't do public sector healthcare work because of my citizenship. I'm not American. So that was a big bummer for me.
I had no idea. So just your citizenship would stop you from working in public health in the United States?
Yeah, and it actually wasn't advertised to me that way because the main thing was like that everybody knew was that if you were not American citizen, you could do like state work but not federal work. But then they changed the policy on that, so I couldn't do like any type of state or federal work, which was so I mostly did I worked with private sector healthcare clients.
Which wasn't exactly what you were looking for.
No.
So you decided to move on from there. And I know you were doing your startup, but I'm just going to put a pin in that for a second. Because at some point you decided to come back to squash. Were you at BCG or were you in your startup when you decided to come back to squash?
I was at BCG. So this is an interesting story. I went to a potluck that was hosted by a foodie friend.
Yeah.
And this
I like them already.
Yeah.
Foodies are great.
Yeah, she hosted this British themed potluck.
Yeah.
And I met an Open Squash member. Basically, she told me to come play at Open Squash because somehow we got in a long conversation about squash, and she was really surprised that, like I played squash because she says there's not a lot of women who play squash.
Yeah.
So she really encouraged me to come out. She told me to go to Queen of the Court, which is actually hosted by Kira.
Yeah.
And she texted all the ladies who were doing the clinic that week. So when I went, I felt really welcomed. Her and then David at the time hosted the first clinic that I went to. And I really enjoyed just playing with all the ladies. Everybody was so friendly. It felt way different than in high school. So I just decided to keep doing more clinics until I became a member. I love the women's community because I think, well, this happens with any community, is it's pretty big and you go and you meet a few people and you play with them once, twice, 3 times and you get to know them. And then gradually over time through going to events like sort of women's monthly round robins or other open squash community events, you meet more people.
Yeah.
And at some point that community starts feeling way smaller when you go to most of the events and most of the people there, and that is such a good feeling. I think I just started getting that with the open squash women's community, where I've met so many of the women who play, and it's very rewarding to be wow, I feel like I'm a part of this now, not just someone.
I think that just outside squash, it's so important in the world today. We can, more than ever in human history, we can be anonymous, on apps, and you're working virtually, and you're not as connected as perhaps one was before the internet was invented. And now to be able to be part of a community where people recognize you and like you, you walk in and everyone smiles. I think it's such an important thing that everyone should have in life, and I don't really care if it's squash that they find or something else. I think it's so important. So I'm very happy that you were able to find it.
Squash. Well, it's Kira, it's the people who work at Open Squash, it's all the women who can play at Open Squash. I love all of them.
Fantastic. Now so you made this transition, because you couldn't find the work that you wanted at BCG into a startup. Tell us what are you doing?
Yeah, it's very simple. I'm trying to build a tool that helps New York City renters find apartments easier, faster, and with less stress. Because I moved 3 times since I moved here. Well, the first time when I moved to New York, and I've only lived in New York 3 years, but I've moved 3 times. So that's on average once per year, basically. And every time it's an incredibly stressful experience. You're constantly strolling on Street Easy. And I thought to myself, is there a solution to this? Because everybody in New York is so busy. People have jobs, people have commitments. And when you're looking for an apartment, that anxiety and just how much work it takes feels like a full-time job. Yeah. So I'm trying to basically make something where it takes the stress away from the process, where you get notified when an apartment matches exactly what you want. I'm currently building out kind of an organizer so you can track the apartments that you're looking at and give updates. I want to build in a review function so that people who are touring buildings can leave reviews for each other. So before you even decide to tour an apartment, you can almost have a Yelp review list of the building, what the other people's experiences were like. It'll look at if the building has had housing violations. And eventually, also I want to make it help you prep applications so that instead of sending your sensitive financial documents to just random agents in the city, it can help prepare the packet that everybody accepts and is verified. So there's a lot of features I want to build on. Right now it just notifies you, and I'm just starting there, but this is early days. I've only been working on this for about a month.
Is it available for people to use yet or not?
I would say I'm almost ready to pilot and test it with people. So I have friends who I know are looking, so I'm going to give it to them. I'm also starting the whole social media thing, so I've been making some apartment tour content, and eventually I want to promote it on there, but it will be soon. Yeah.
Is there anything our community can do for you?
That is very sweet. Well, in the community, if you are looking to basically move soon, I would love for you to try out this product. It's completely free, and I would just, if you want to use it, because basically like instead of looking on Street Easy and scrolling the map endlessly, like you just tell it what you're looking for and it will email you whenever a listing gets listed immediately. So then you can like be the first to tour it and everything. So I think like if the community, like if there are people in the community who are moving, I would love for them to try it out.
How can they be in touch with you?
They can email Abodee, spelled Abodee, New York City @gmail.com, and I will let you use the product for free.
Perfect. That's what community is for. So, you know, if you're going to move, you should try Helen's product. Let's now talk about how your progression in squash has been. So you came back from squash, you must have been a little rusty.
Yeah.
How have you gone? Are you improving? How's that going for you?
Of course. So I would say like I've played consistently at open squash for a year now, and I think I've improved a lot.
Yeah.
So I would say when I came back, like I was very rusty. I was probably around 2.5, but I got like encouraged by like all the women to basically participate in the Howe Cup. So I went to the Howe Cup with like my team to Seattle last fall, and we placed first in our division.
Oh!
So it was like our first ever.
Which was your division?
It was the D division, but I was still very proud of us.
So clearly you should have been a C player already if you won the D.
Oh my gosh. Soon. I've actually like placed second in 2 tournaments in like the 3-0. So I was like, maybe next year I'll be ready to play 3-5. But I feel like very just proud that like I've improved so much. Because when I was first playing, I was losing so much, and now I'm losing less. I hope to play squash like for a long time. So I'm just like, like at this rate, like later in my life when I'm 50, I'll be a great player. And I feel really excited.
This, by the way, is one of the things I love most about starting later, is if you were like the #1 player in your roster at college, your squash level will decline.
Yeah.
But if you're like me, and to a lesser extent you, because you started younger than me, you can improve for years and years. Even at my ripe old age, I'm playing, I have the highest rating right now at this very moment that I've ever had in my whole life.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Which is amazing. And, so it's just something that you can just see yourself improve. And, and that's what's interesting in life, is how can you make yourself better?
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of why I'm playing too. Because I feel like when I was in high school, I was a great runner. But now when I run and all my friends are running marathons, I don't feel like as fast as I was. So running is no longer a sport where I feel like there's an upward trajectory for me. Right. But squash, it's like totally different.
Totally is, yeah. It's amazing. And so everyone should try squash because you can get better. So one of the other things that is interesting to me is you came from China. Was there any squash in China when you left? Because there is a booming thing in China now. Have you seen that at all? Have you gone back? Have you seen it or not?
No. So another member did tell me that there's a lot of squash in China now. But what's also cool is that, so I was actually born in South Africa.
Oh.
And I know, surprising fact.
Tell me more.
And like when I came to open squash, like as we all know, like one of the coaches here, Adele, is from South Africa.
She is.
And I still go to South Africa pretty like frequently. Like my dad does work there and stuff, so the family will take trips. And I got the chance to play like in South Africa, which of course I never did because I was like a young child. Like I left South Africa when I was about 8. So Adele like basically introed me to someone who plays at this club called Camp Space Squash Club. Camp Space is like this beautiful like area in Cape Town right facing the beach, and the Camp Space Squash Club, like they have a rooftop with like a little bar that you can see the ocean. So it's like so nice. So I played there like all because like Adele told me that there's a lot of squash in South Africa and she introed me. So that was such a fun experience.
That is so much fun. That's the other thing I love about squash is if you play squash, you go anywhere in the world, you have immediate friends. Like I'm sure that everyone there was like, oh, you're a squash player, welcome.
Yes.
It's a great way to get connected to local communities.
Yes, I definitely felt that. I was there like every day during break.
So do you go back to China much or not?
I would say yes. Like maybe once a year.
Yeah, that's still, I mean, yeah, that's more often than I go to England.
I hope to play more squash there. It's just like, I think like the squash community and the way you play squash is oriented a little bit differently than in the US, where instead of having these like clubs and these communities associated with clubs, it's almost like they have a lot of courts and coaches, like in the way that someone would learn how to play tennis. So like there's like they're kind of leading with like that infrastructure of there's more courts, there's resources to help teach squash, but there isn't as much of like you can just get in a group chat and be like, hey, do you want to like hit at this time? So that was kind of my impression, but it also might be very different like all across China.
That makes sense. I don't know, but you know, my understanding was when squash got into the Olympics, we're very excited, 2028. That was when China said, you know, okay, we're going to invest in this sport. So if you put those two things together, it's not surprising that the focus is on coaching and developing squash players that can then be competitive. So that makes sense. But that's a step on the journey. You put squash courts there, in the end, it'll build a community.
Yes, I hope as well. I actually think Chinese people will love squash.
Yeah.
And I think squash has a lot of similarities with badminton.
I agree.
It's like the only other racket sport where there's such rapid lateral movement.
Yeah. Well, Helen, thank you so much for coming. This has been a great interview. And, you know, I look forward to seeing you above 3.5 soon.
Yes, very soon. Thank you so much, James. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Yeah, and expanding the community.
Yeah.
Thanks
Our
for having
pleasure.
me.
It's super.